Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third session in the Mara Mastery series. This week, Tobi and me are going to talk about surveys. So we're going to show you everything related to setting up the surveys in Mara, how to send them out, how to reply to survey feedback, and how to analyze it, and also the widgets that you can build and customize in Mara. This session is also going to be recorded, so if you need to leave at any point, you will get the recording afterwards. And also we have the recordings of the past two sessions, which were on the inbox and analytics. So if you missed those, you can also find that on our YouTube channel. And feel free to already sign up for the next session, which is next week. Again, in this session, you have the comment section. You can ask any questions that come to your mind. The goal is that you can that you leave the session knowing everything you need to know about surveys and widgets. We're going to monitor the chat throughout the webinar, but also there will be some time to answer open questions in the end. So really feel free to post anything in the chat. I will directly start with the surveys and share my screen, and then in the second part, Tobi will take over and talk a bit more about widgets. So last two sessions were on answering feedback and analyzing your reviews. Also the AI assistant was covered, and now we're going to talk about everything that's under gather and showcase, so surveys and widgets. You can find the survey screen here, which directly leads you to this screen. There is an overview of your existing surveys. This is our demo account, so there are quite many example surveys already. And this is also where you can set up your surveys. So the idea with the Mara surveys is that you can simply build your own post-stay or in-stay surveys that are sent to your guests after during their stay, and that the surveys help you gather detailed feedback without sending your guests long questionnaires with 20 pages answering every detail about their stay. We have tried to rethink the surveys a bit, trying to keep them simple, make them smart again, and especially with the goal to keep the negative feedback internal so that guests that were unhappy provide that feedback, that you can also react to that feedback, but that happy guests also are prompted to leave a public review on Google or TripAdvisor as well. I will now tell you a bit more about how to create the surveys, the different options that you have, and then afterwards we're going to look into sending them out and how to analyze and reply to them a bit more. So you have this create survey button here in the top corner, and then you see our survey builder. Here you can simply set them up. You can preview your current status. First of all, each survey is assigned to one specific property. So here in the top, you have a drop-down if you manage multiple properties, and you can assign the survey to one specific property, and all survey feedbacks that you will receive will be assigned to this specific property, and you will also be able to then see them in the analytics and the inbox for this property. The first setting that you should make is this post-stay versus in-stay setting. The standard type, I'd say, is the post-stay survey. So a questionnaire that you send to your guests after their stay. They receive an email in your guest journey communication asking them to rate their stay, and they will be redirected to the Mara surveys. And this feedback will be treated as any other online feedback that you receive on the OTAs within Mara. So it's running into your Mara score, into your KPIs in the analytics screens. The other option you have here is in-stay surveys. So you can also choose this as a survey type. This will not change anything about the setup options, but if you want to ask for feedback throughout the stay, so for example, send your guest an email while they're still at your property, if you want to react to that feedback throughout the stay, or also putting QR codes at certain places in your property, you can select this option. And the only difference is that this feedback will not run into your overall analytics. So you can still see all those survey results. You can also export them and analyze them in the survey screens, but the in-stay surveys are not included in your overall review analytics, as it's not an overall rating of the stay. And then other than that, you have templates here. So if you have multiple properties and you already set up your survey and you've customized everything the way you wanted to, then you don't need to do that every single time, but you can just load a survey that you've already created and then just assign the other properties to that. So you can reuse an existing survey here. You have a preview function here that's very helpful for you to also check your current settings. You can just click on that and then you will see how the survey currently looks. You can check that for desktop and mobile version. You can always restart the preview, meaning that you are taken back to the beginning of your survey, but you can also click through the survey here to really see what it looks like at the moment with the settings that you put here. And if you click publish survey, the survey will be saved and published, but you can still edit it afterwards, and you can also still decide if it should be active or deactive, but that's how you save your status of the survey. Then there's the customize button. This is to customize the general layout of your survey. You have the option to change the picture, the accent colors, the header in your survey. Apart from that, the styling is very kept simple. As you could see in the preview, this is the standard Mara styling, and they cannot be customized above those options at the moment, as we try to keep it really, really clean and simple here. And now I will go into the different setup options. You have a title for your survey. You have different texts that you can adjust here. This is the first page title and intro text. So you could define that here. And then most importantly is the survey language. Here you can define the default language. This is the language in which you will set up the survey. This can be English, German, whatever you prefer, and you decide the formality. So how guests should be addressed in languages that differentiate between formal and informal addressing, such as German or French. Once you've set up the language, it makes sense to not change it afterwards, because if you make changes here, they will be saved in this language. But you have the option to add additional languages. Per default, those languages are already here. You can also remove them or add additional languages. And what we do, we translate all the text that you have in your survey automatically. And then the survey is available in any language you wish. So if your guests receive the survey link and they might not have English as their first language, they have the option, first of all, to select a language themselves in the survey, but also we do automatically detect the browser language. So if my browser is set to German, for example, and I receive the survey link, even if the default language is English, I will directly see the survey in German, as this is my browser language. The translations are created automatically, but you can always edit them. So via this button, you see all texts that are in your survey. You see the default text, and you can also adjust them here. So every piece of text that you have in your survey can be adjusted here and edited. And then you have the translation. So you can also adjust individual translations. If you say, I want to express that a little different in German, you could do that here and then just save it. So you are really free in editing the texts. And then the next setting here is directly the overall rating question. So this is a default as well. So this cannot be removed. For all following things, you have this little toggle. You can decide if that should be included in your survey at all or not, but the overall rating question must be in there. This is the same as the overall rating in Google or Booking, and we also treat it the same in all our analytics. So you can decide whether you want to have a star rating, so 1 to 5 stars. You can, of course, again, adjust the question that you ask here, or if you want to ask for an NPS rating, and then you have the 10-point scale here. And below this, each guest will get an open text field where they can also add additional input. So if we preview that and you start, then you have the question, how likely would you recommend the Mara resort? And then they can rate here, and below you have the question, what was leading to this rating. So this is the open text field, and everything that is put in here by the guest will then be treated as the review text also in your inbox and will be analyzed in our analytics, also in the review insights. So the topic detection and the sentiment analytic is also working for the feedback that you receive here. Important, if you decide on one of those question types, this cannot be changed after you publish the survey. So once you publish the survey, you cannot switch back to star rating if you've selected NPS. So that should be clear in the beginning, because that impacts the analytics, because it's on different rating scales. The next thing is the follow-up question. So as I said, we try to keep the surveys really simple, because we believe that asking a ton of questions on every aspect of the stay isn't really helpful. We really want the guests to complete the whole survey, to not stop in the middle because they are annoyed by the questions. We want to provide insightful feedback. And this is why we've decided on two options. The first is the AI conversational. I will explain that in a second in more detail, but this is the AI asking follow-up questions. And then the more common one is the custom questions. So here you have the possibility to add up to 10 additional questions if you want. You can just add a question here. You can select the type of question. So there are different options as well. Text is just an open text question where the guest can then type in an open text field. You have, again, the star rating and the NPS rating. So you can let the guest rate certain aspects of their stay, or you can choose a yes/no question. And you can also edit everything here. You can select for each question whether it's a required question or not. So if the guest has to answer to that question before moving to the next page in the survey, or if it's an optional question and can be left empty. So here you can add up to 10 questions, as I just said. Just add them here, and then you can again preview them anytime. So if you're uncertain on what it looks like in the final survey, just preview it and test it out a bit. And then the second option is AI conversational. So what we do here is, instead of asking fixed follow-up questions that are the same for each guest, the AI generates follow-up questions based on what the guest has written in their initial overall rating of the stay. So if I rate the stay as a 10 out of 10 and I write great location, then the AI will follow up with questions going into more depth to get more detailed feedback, to highlight certain aspects of the stay, but also for negative feedback to get more insights on what exactly the guest didn't like, what exactly the issue was here. For negative feedback, that just helps you to better understand the guest, to follow up better. And for positive feedback, that creates guest feedback that is really like including all aspects of the stay that the guest really loved, and highlights maybe specifics that you weren't even aware about, that the guest really liked that, because you're not forcing the guest to rate maybe the location. Maybe that's not even relevant for the guest. Maybe they loved that there was a fresh egg at the breakfast buffet. And what we do in the next step then is the public review generation. So prompting the guest to also leave a public review if they're happy. And this allows us then to also post reviews that are really like insightful, that a guest sounds very excited, that there is maybe like a testimonial sentence in the review that the guest leaves, because we followed up on what the guest actually wrote here. Because from our experience, some guests just leave very general comments in the beginning, but then following up on those comments provides more insightful and detailed feedback. And also for the guest, when answering a survey, it just feels more personalized, because the guest isn't forced to answer the same questionnaire as every other guest. Instead, it really feels like the hotel is listening to me. They are asking follow-up questions based on what I just said. And this is just making it more likely that the guest fills out the whole survey and doesn't like just stop after the first question. I will show you that in a second as well, but you can decide how many follow-up questions you want to ask. So usually 1 or 2 are fine, but you can ask up to 3 follow-up questions based on the input the guest has provided. And you can also decide whether you want to do that only for positive ratings, only for negative ones, or for both positive and negative ones. So just to show you that real quick, If I rate this stay great, I will show you in a final version as well how the review draft is then managed. But just to show you, I will be asked, like, do you want to share your feedback with other people? And then what we do is we generate a draft for the review that will be generated here based on what I just put in my first part of the review. And then I can copy that draft, or will be redirected to Google. But maybe it's better to show you that in a second when there's actually a review draft generated. But yeah, those two options are there. There is arguments for both, but we believe that this conversational version really makes it simpler for the guests, and then also helps you generate public reviews that are detailed and insightful. And this is the next part. This is the public review generation part. So here, what we do is we ask the guest, what I just showed you, to write a public review in the end. You can define when we want to do that. So of course, it only makes sense from our perspective if the guest was happy. So you can say if the guest left the rating 8 or higher on a 10-point scale, or maybe 4 or higher on the 5-point scale, depending on what you chose in the beginning. And then Mara will ask the guest to publish their feedback also on Google or TripAdvisor. So you can decide which platforms you want to link here, depending on where you want to collect more feedback. If you select Google, for example, then there will be a link directly to your property's Google listing. And this makes it as simple as possible for the guests to also leave a public review, because they only need to copy the suggested review and post it. Of course, they still need to log in on Google and they need to post it, but this is as close as you can get to just prompting you guys. If you are happy, maybe you want to share your feedback. And then if you have the AI review booster turned on, then this feedback is even more insightful than it would have maybe been if the guest has written the review just by themselves. The last part is the contact details. This is just to ask for email address and name of the guest. You can decide if you always want to do that, never want to do that, or only for example, positive or negative ratings. The idea with this setting is you can say if a guest was happy, we want to ask them for a public review. Then we don't need their contact details because they will also publish a public review. But if the guest was unhappy, we don't want to ask for a public review. Instead, we want to contact them personally, reach out to them, and we will ask for their email and name to contact them afterwards. Important with this setting is if you do not ask for contact details, per default, all Mara survey responses are anonymous, so we don't know who has left a feedback unless the guest leaves their email address, and only that allows you to answer to the feedback as well. So asking for email addresses might be necessary to also respond to the feedback, and also for you to know who this feedback actually came from. There is a second option when sharing the survey to include those details yourself when sending it out, so that you don't need to ask the guest for that. I will explain that also in a second, but this is what you can define here. And then in the last page, the guest will be asked just simply to leave their feedback. And the last setting here is the notifications. This is especially relevant when setting up in-stay surveys, but you might also want to have that for the post-stay survey version. For surveys, you can get live notifications when a guest has answered your survey. So especially if you ask for feedback during the stay, you will definitely want to know to react as fast as possible. So you can set notifications. For example, if the rating is low, certain team members should get an email immediately, and then you can select that here, and then you will get notified whenever a guest has left a negative feedback. But you can, of course, also allow that for all survey feedbacks. If you don't activate the notifications, then you will get this daily review notification email that you usually get. As for all other reviews, surveys will be included in there as well. So if a guest has left a review via the survey, you still know about it, and you also see that in your inbox. But this notification setting can help to track survey responses and immediately react if needed. And then once you've set everything up, you can publish that. Again, you can test it out via the preview. I will now show you an example of how the follow-up questions and the review generation looks, to just make sure you've seen it as well. So this is just a test survey that I've opened already. As you can see, my browser is set to German, so I see it in German, and it's also attached here to the survey link already, but I have the option also to change that here. So I'm going to set that to English. And then I would, for example, say great location. And now this survey also has the follow-up questions activated. So I said great location, and now 2 follow-up questions are generated. And the AI is asking, what exactly did you enjoy about the location? Was it the neighborhood, the access to transit or nearby attractions? And were there any local spots, restaurants, park sites you discovered that you recommend to future guests? So this is already like prompting very much towards insights that could be useful for other potential guests, so something that could be included in my public review as well. And it also, of course, helps you understand the guest better. And then if the guest filled that out, the next step, because that was a positive review, is now the public review generation part. So that was turned on for this survey. So we're asking for a small favor, and would you like to share this feedback with other people as well? And now what we do is we suggest a review to the guest that is including all the information I've provided before, all my feedback. And if I would have written something negative in the beginning, then this would of course also be included. So we're not like faking positive reviews here. Instead, we include everything the guest puts into the survey, and then I can copy this draft. I can of course edit it, and then there is this post your review on Google button. So this will redirect me to the properties Google listing. I of course have to be signed into my personal Google account, but I can then just paste my review example and publish it. So this is making it very simple for the guest to leave a feedback. If I don't want to do that, I can just say maybe later, and I can skip that part, of course, but this really makes posting a published review, if I'm happy, as simple as possible. And we try to create positive and insightful reviews for you by that. If I stop at this point and I just close the survey, maybe that's also important to know, my previous responses are saved. So as soon as I answer the overall questions and the questions that you've defined, I'm done, and the feedback is running into Mara and it's saved, and it's not lost because I maybe closed the survey at this point. So that's what it looked like building the survey. I can publish the survey, then it's going to be saved, and I will see it in my overview here. And here I can also then see all the information. So I see whether I chose the AI boosters or the AI conversations or additional questions, whether it's a post-stay or an in-stay survey, the defined languages, where I'm collecting reviews currently. And then I can set the survey to active or deactive. So as soon as it's set to active, the responses that are collected are running into the inbox. They're running into your Mara score, your KPIs. So if you want to test it in the beginning, make sure you deactivate it. You can, of course, test in the preview, but you could also just put it on deactive, and then you can test it as much as you want. But just make sure that before you start sending the survey out to guests, this toggle needs to be blue. Otherwise, the responses are not going to be collected in here. All right. Then here you have different actions. You can edit the survey, as I mentioned, anytime. So you can just click here and you will be redirected to the survey editor again. You can export all the replies that you've received. And you can, of course, delete it. And then you can share the survey. And that would be the next step, sending the survey out. Unless, Tobi, I've forgotten something when it comes to building the survey that you want to add.
No, let me quickly have a look if there's any new question. All answered.
Okay.
So you can continue.
Perfect. So when it comes to sending the surveys out, each survey has an individual survey ID, and that's, as I said, connected to one property. So all survey responses that run in will be shown for this properties analytics and this properties inbox. So also when you share, make sure you share the right properties survey in the right emails and not mix it up. But when you click on the share button, you see that there is a review link. So a link to the survey and a QR code. So you could, of course, also use this QR code in your property, put it at the reception, or also for in-stay surveys, for example, put it in the room and ask for feedback throughout the stay. But the most important thing to understand is that we do not send out the survey links from within Mara. So you probably have a guest communication in place. You might have a mailing tool, your CRM, with which you contact your guests. You have your post-day mailings maybe already in place. And what we do is we provide the survey setup, and you have this survey link that you can then implement in your existing guest communication. So this link can be implemented in any email that you want to send out to your guests. And then all the feedback that we collect with this is running into Mara, and you can analyze it there and use it there, but it's not being sent out from Mara. And that's the first important thing. And then the second thing is that the survey link is static. So it just includes the survey ID, which is the same link then for every guest. So if you implement this link in your emails, each guest will receive the same survey link, meaning that we don't know anything about the guest. As I mentioned before, it's anonymous, unless the guest adds their contact details in the survey themselves. But there is the possibility to also include metadata, so different URL parameters in this link to customize the link and to make sure that each guest has their own individual link, and you can send us information, for example, about the guest name or the reservation ID with this link already. This is a bit more of an advanced setting, and we will shortly explain this now. There is also a help article on that, but to show you how that works, I'll just open this tab. So we have the static survey link here, which is just the Mara link and then the survey ID. But you do have the possibility to add variables that you want to send with the survey link, and that makes it a dynamic link. So for example, something that is often used and makes a lot of sense is the reservation ID. So if you have the reservation ID available in your mailing tool, you can fill this information for each guest. So if the reservation ID would be 1234, this is then filled for each individual guest with their own reservation ID within your mailing tool. So this is a dynamic link. What you can do, you just add the question mark here, and then you can theoretically add any kind of variable that you want to include with any name, and then just fill it for the guest. And what we will do, we will collect that in Mara, and then for each guest you have additional information in the inbox. I'll show you that in a second as well. And below the feedback you see, for example, the reservation ID or the room number or whatever information you attach to that link, so that you have more information about the guest. And that can be simply done by adding this question mark and then just any kind of variable that you want to have. And there are certain variables that we have predefined that have a function within Mara. And if you use them exactly the way we name them, then you can also have additional functions from that. So for example, the reservation ID is a defined variable. If you have your PMS integration active in Mara, if we have the reservation ID, and we can map your guest survey responses to your PMS data, as we do it for booking or Expedia reviews as well, which allows us on one hand to show additional information about the guest stay in the inbox. So together with the survey feedback, you then also see the duration of the stay, the room the guest was in, the rate, stuff like that. And on the other hand, we can map the feedback that the guest has left back to their PMS profile, and, for example, create guest preference notes in the PMS. Other than that, you could also attach the room number. So I will now maybe switch to the help article because I think it's a bit easier to show you that. Those are the variables that we have predefined. So if you include the room number, just as you can include the reservation ID, then of course you see the room number in the inbox, and we can also provide room level analysis based on the survey feedback. This also works if you don't have the PMS integration active. An additional variable that we have that has a function is the email. So if you do not want to ask every guest for their email as part of the survey, and you want to make sure to be able to respond to every survey feedback, then you could also include your guest email in the survey link and fill that for every guest. And then this email is part of the guest feedback and allows you to respond. It's just important that you make sure that all data protection requirements are made so that your guests are aware that this is not an anonymous survey and that you're sharing their email address at some point. And then the email address doesn't need to be assessed as part of the survey anymore. And then there's the reviewer name. This just including the name allows us to address the guest with this name when generating responses to the survey feedback. And here you can see again what this would look like in your mailing tool probably. So most tools allow for those kind of liquid variables or dynamic variables. As for example, if you address the guest in the beginning of an email, then it says hello, and then it's first name, and first name is filled for every guest. And with the example of the reservation ID, you would have this basic link, you attach reservation ID equals, and then this part is filled for every guest automatically within the tool that you use to send out your guest emails. If you want to attach multiple variables, you can just connect them with an and. So just adding and then, for example, room_number, and then this is filled automatically for every single guest. And if we open this link, so now we have attached the reservation ID, the room number, and an email, for example, and I open that link, this would still open the survey exactly as it would for the static link. So that doesn't change anything about the survey itself. It just sends those data back to Mara when I finish the survey, and we can then see this kind of information about the guest in the inbox as well, and use it for all the functions that I just mentioned. So again, there is an article on that as well. Most importantly is that you can attach your own variables. Those 4 variables that I just mentioned are ones that have functions in Mara, and it's important that you name them exactly the way we name them if you include them, but you could also attach any kind of other information you want to attach to your surveys, meaning that this will be in the inbox. Yeah.
So 2 things, they are actually quite helpful for what we see with how our customers set them up so far. One is just their own parameters, for example, UTM parameters to track from which sources survey responses are generated. You might have a guest journey on WhatsApp and some messages on via email, or even some A/B testing if you like to test out different messagings, and you can do that and add specific parameters and that just show up and are also possible to export and then analyze. This is one thing, and the other thing is what Paola mentioned. Especially the reservation ID is important, but especially if you also have the PMS integration available. If you don't have a PMS integration, still it can be relevant, right? Because if you then see in a negative review something popped up, you'll at least see the reservation ID, can then further trace the reservation, where was it coming from, like here, right? There's the reservation ID 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you would have now a PMS integration, we would automatically populate more data, like the room number, like the rate, and so on and so forth, which would give you additional information without needing to fill that. So if you have a PMS integration set up and push a reservation ID with each survey, you actually wouldn't need to set the room number, for example, because this is then something that will pull out automatically. And again, Paola mentioned that already. This is really an advanced setting, but an important one. So if you couldn't follow all the details, we'll share the recording afterwards as well. And if you still struggle setting up something, maybe in your tool, we're always here to help. We know that most of the parameters, especially the reservation ID, name, and email, are available in most tools. Like the major CRM players all have them in place, and customers of ours set that up accordingly, and also guest messaging platforms. But if you struggle, we'll share the recording first, and also the help center that Paola just showed has the details again. But if you then still struggle, feel free to reach out. Yeah, handing back over to you, Paola.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. So this is the part where you can share it. And then the next part would be receiving the survey responses. So you can see already here that there's a certain number of replies running in. And I will now show you how you can reply to them from within Mara. We had a session on answering and the inbox already, but just to show you what that looks like for surveys again. So if you're in the inbox, all the survey feedback that you receive runs in here as well. Important again, the inbox has this default filter that it shows only reviews that can be replied to. So if a survey feedback comes back without an email address, without any option to contact the guest back, then this will not be shown here unless you untoggle this, and then you can still see it in the inbox. But when you want to reply, the inbox will only show you the survey feedbacks that you can reply to. I already filtered for review source Mara surveys. Usually this is just part of your overall inbox next to Google and Booking reviews as well. It can be identified by this little Mara logo, and then it always has the title of the survey here in the preview as well. And then for those cases where you've added additional information, as we just explained via those parameters in your URL, it looks like this. So you have the additional information here. You can see which language my browser has set, and then also the room number and the reservation ID, because we've set that. But also for surveys that didn't include this information, for example, here, the guest was asked for their contact details as part of the survey. And then you can also see the contact details the guest has provided themselves below. And then as for all other reviews, Mara is pre-generating a reply draft, so a suggestion on how to reply here. You can edit that as you want, and then you have two options to send that to the guest. The first option is the send via email button, which means sending the response directly from your Mara inbox. So sending it out from a Mara email address. If you click send, the reply you've drafted here will be immediately sent to the guest's email address. The email will contain a defined header, which is Mara Resort, in this case, has replied to your survey feedback. Then it will include your response, and below also the feedback that the guest has left, so that they can see it again, what it refers to. This email is coming from a no reply Mara email address. So the guest doesn't see your properties, personal email addresses or anything. And a lot of our customers use this option because they don't want the guest to directly contact them back. The guest still has the option theoretically to reply to this email, even though it's a no reply email address, and most of the time people don't do that. But still, if the guest tries to respond to that, you can define what email address this reply should go to, so that it doesn't get lost, it doesn't get back to a Mara spam folder or something, in your reply settings, in the very bottom, you have the option to define a reply to email. So that can be a general feedback at your hotel, for example, a general email address where you want the responses that you might get via email that you want them to go to. If nothing is set here, the default is that the person who has sent out the email here will receive the feedback. So if I'm logged in tomorrow with my email address and I send the email, the guest gets a response from the no reply Mara email address. But if the guest still replies, then I receive it to my personal hotel email or my Mara user email. So it makes sense to set this if you don't want guests to reply to the personal user email addresses. The second option is the copy and mail option. So if you don't want guests to receive responses from the general Mara no reply email address, you can send the emails yourself, of course, from your personal email account with your personal signature and everything. The copy and mail button simply opens an Outlook draft and a separate pop-up, includes the same stuff. So it's already pre-filled with the guest email, your email address, the reply text, and you just need to send it out manually and then mark the survey as answered manually here, because we cannot track whether you've sent the survey or not. It will then be marked as published, removed from the unanswered reviews. And if you click send via email, it's the same as for Booking or Expedia. If it's sent out, it's directly marked as published in the inbox. So this allows you to also quickly respond to your survey feedback directly from within the inbox without needing to like copy paste feedback somewhere. You can just send the email directly from within here using the drafts Mara pre-generates for you. And then the last part would be the analytics. So how do we analyze the survey feedback? As I said, the overall rating that the guests provide in the first question of the survey is running into your general Mara analytics. Also there, we already had a session on the analytics. So just to show you one thing in here. So this is running into your standard KPIs. So if a new survey feedback runs in, the number of reviews goes up, it impacts the Mara score, and it also runs into the response rate if you can respond to the survey feedback. But in every analytics screen, you have the possibility to filter the included data. So the default is that it always includes all your feedbacks, surveys, and reviews, but you can also analyze only the survey data here or only the review data, just so that you are aware of this. And the same accounts for the review insights, so the sentiment analytics and the topic detections, where we qualitatively analyze your reviews. Here, it's again important that this only analyzes the first overall questions. If you have additional questions set up, this is not analyzed in here. And you can, of course, also use the AI assistant to create custom reports. The AI assistant can also access your survey feedback. And if you want to get analytics or like insights from the survey feedback, the AI assistant can do that as well. But if you want to analyze all your questions and have a more detailed analysis of your surveys, you can get that in the survey screen. Next to each survey, you have the View Analytics button, and I'm just going to open this one, where you have statistics for each question. So the overall question, as well as all additional questions, depending on their type. This looks a little different here. So if the first question, for example, is an NPS question, so the 10-point scale question, you also get an NPS score. So Mara calculates that for you. You have the promoters and everything here, so you can export that as well for each of your surveys. The open questions are just shown as little comments here. This is a yes/no question, and you can download this data here. You get an Excel sheet where you can use all the data and analyze it separately if you want. And then lastly, below the survey overview, you also have a tracking screen. I'll just set the date. So this helps you track the performance or like the completion rates of your survey, you can select the property here again. What you have here is just the number of surveys opened. So then the surveys completed, which is how many of the surveys we have saved answers for. So how many of the guests have from this opening to actually answering the first question so that something is saved for the survey. This is an important conversion indicator. And then we do have two other options. This is review proposal shown and review as button click. So review proposal shown refers to, if you have this set up, of course, the page where the guest is asked to leave a public review and sees the proposal of the review. If this is much lower than the completion or the open rate, this might just be because of your settings, because not every guest will see a proposal. So only maybe positive rated surveys will be shown this proposal at all. So this should not be like interpreted like too critical. If it's like lower, that can just be because of your settings. But then from this number to this number, you can see of the people who have seen the review proposal, how many have clicked on the button. That actually leads them to Google. So how many of them have shown an intent to actually leave a review. And this is as close as we get to tracking the conversion of leaving a review. We cannot know, and unfortunately also not track if a guest has actually left a review after clicking on that button, but this already helps to get a feeling of how many of those guests who have seen the review proposal actually left a public review as well. And from our experience, those conversions are relatively high, around 30 to 40%, indicating that guests are actually willing to then also post a public review after I've seen the review proposal. And that was the very fast run through. Tobi, is there anything you want to add here? Are there any questions on the analytics or the surveys in general before we jump into the widgets part?
There are no questions, so I would propose we directly jump into the widget part. For everyone who still joined in, again, the remark, we will probably extend this session here a little bit and will be over time. So if you need to jump out, that's totally fine. We'll record the session and send you the recording as well. So if you can't stay with us for another about 15 minutes about review widgets, absolutely fine. And you'll receive all the information in the upcoming days with the recording. And with having said that, I would directly jump into review widgets. As Paula mentioned, you'll find them here in Gather and Showcase. And the purpose of our review widgets is to boost the conversion on your site and just give guests who ideally landed on your website to do the final booking another trust signal with showing them your stellar reviews and ratings on your website. The idea is, if a guest wants to book with you and then also decides to book directly with you on your website, then at the very end of the guest booking journey, they will find this additional trust badge that signals them, oh yeah, the hotel I decided for has very good reviews, and just increases the conversion by a few percentage points as well. So let me quickly guide you through how to set them up. There are two different widgets you can choose from. One is a floating widget. You see it here in the bottom right, that just stays in one position on your site or on each page, however you define that. And then there is a static badge that just scrolls with the page that you need to embed at a certain place in the website. In here, you see an overview of all widgets that are configured. I'll just look at one now so that you directly see how it looks. This is like a floating badge that will just scroll, will just stay in one position no matter the user scrolls through the page or not. It signals the overall rating and the number of reviews this rating is based on, and also shows logos that create trust with guests because they know them. We on purpose decided not to show any kind of Mara logo because your guests likely don't know Mara at all, but they know Booking, Google, and TripAdvisor in this case, and this is what actually signals trust to them. And then if guests click on this widget, there's another deep dive that shows the individual scores per platform and a link to the reviews. If you'd like to, you can toggle that off as well, and review us on Google or TripAdvisor button or any other kind of platform that allows publishing reviews. This is the floating badge. I'll quickly jump into one of the static badges here to show you how this looks. Same property, same configuration, so it shows the same numbers here, but just as a static badge that you can incorporate at any place on your site as you'd like to. And yeah, also shows this overlay once the user clicks on the badge itself. With the widgets, we try to create like a very easy way to incorporate such a widget. But I'll also show you afterwards, if you need more flexibility, how you can accomplish that with the with our API. For now, if you decided for one of the widget, you can just create one here. You can also create both if you'd like to, and then give it a name. I'll just name that website test widget now. Then you can select the property for which you'd like to configure the survey, and then there are a few different options you can choose from. First, you can select which sources should be displayed. So in this example, it would show Agoda, Trip.com, Booking, Google, Holiday Check, and TripAdvisor. You can choose from all platforms you set up for your property. So in this case, this property has no hostel world listing added to the property. You can set it up here or click on this button and it will redirect you to the property settings screen where you can set that up. But if you say, for example, yes, I have an Agoda listing, but I barely receive any reviews. I maybe just have 2 or 3 reviews on this platform, which obviously wouldn't signal a lot of trust. You can just toggle that off and, for example, just focus on the big 3, Google Booking and TripAdvisor, or big 4 with Expedia, for example. And then the widget will just incorporate the 3. If you add Agoda, it will include these 4, and so on and so forth. And then there are 2 other sections. So what you can do is you can remove the review us on Google, review us on TripAdvisor buttons by just toggling this off. So this will just remove those buttons. If you then also don't want to link directly to the OTAs and review platforms, you can toggle that off, and the text changes from reviews on based on X reviews and or read reviews with the link to just based on X reviews without a link. There are pros and cons for both options. I'm actually a fan of providing transparency of the reviews and adding the links, and because I assume when guests see you're rated like a 4.5 on Google, for example, or on Booking with like a 9.2, and they're interested in the reviews, they'll find you and they'll find the reviews and read through them. Yeah, but there are also other opinions. Some hotels or hotel groups have the strict policy not to directly link to any OTA, and if this is your preference, you can toggle that off here as well. Yeah, last thing that needs to be selected for a floating badge. This is the only option that's just available for floating badge. Where should this widget be positioned, bottom right, bottom left, or top right, and that's it. And you can just create the widget. I'll not create that one because I created those two here already. Next thing is you have to embed that on your page. This is likely something not you who are right now listening are doing, but something you'll forward to your website developer or your marketing team. There is this get code button here, and this contains all the information that's needed for your developers. So ideally just copy all of that and send it to your website developer or marketing team. I'll quickly go through how to implement that on a website in a minute, but it basically contains of 2 code snippets that have to be incorporated in different areas. For the static batch and for the floating batch, there's actually just 1 code snippet that needs to be embedded on the side this display should be shown. It will be a little bit more technical right now, but I thought I'll just go through such a setup. We're using Webflow. I guess many of you are using WordPress or any other content management system. But the idea will always be similar. And once you forward the instructions to your website developer, they will know where to embed this code. I'll quickly go through this page, and in the Webflow page, you have the option on each single page, or even in the site setting if you'd like to incorporate it on the whole site. But I just want to incorporate that now on one, like the widgets on one specific site. So I'm going into my page settings, and in my page settings, I have the option to add custom code. And what I'll then do is for the floating batch and the static batch, I'll just incorporate the code that we just saw and save that. And then in addition, for the static batch, I have to define where exactly the static batch should be positioned. So I just added like a code embed module here, so that like in WordPress, there are different modules, and in most other website builders as well. And there is usually one for code embed, and I just added it here. And in this code embed, I added the second code snippet here. And now I'm quickly showing you how that looks. Just starting the preview quickly, and then we see this widget incorporated on the website in a few seconds. So here it is. Let's scroll to the top. The floating batch obviously shows up directly and will stick in the bottom right as I defined that. And then the static batch will statically remain in this one position, no matter if we scroll through it or not. And obviously we can click on that and see the details and so on and so forth. Important is that the widgets are obviously turned on and active. They're not work if they're not active, but that's it. The moment you create one widget, you can embed it on the website, and it will work. Okay, now I'll quickly do a very short detour to our API, because we designed those widgets for independent hotels or small hotel groups who just want to have a quick solution and like a beautiful widget that serves the main purpose. But obviously we know that there are many hotel groups out there that need more customization options, and they should be enabled to build their own widgets in their style, with their font, with their colors, but with our data. And this is possible with our API. Very quick detour. We'll go into more details with the API in the next week's sessions, but here in the settings API keys, you'll have a link to the API documentation, and you can create API keys. I created one already, so I'll just use this one. and I'm opening up the API documentation. This is also something you'll probably share with one of the technical developers for the website implementation. If you'd like to test the API, you can simply use the API key here for authorization, and then you'll have access to your data via the API. And in this technical interface, you can also test the API. So you can just click on the widget sections, and those are the two endpoints needed to develop your own custom widgets with Mara data. And the first one is just to get the widget IDs. You can try it out and just execute, and here we would receive all widgets that we configured in our account. For example, the website floating badge. I'll just use this ID now and copy that one. And then you actually get the widget data similar to the one or exactly the same that we use for the widgets seen already here. So we can enter the ID here and then get the same data that is visible in our like this was the floating the static badge, this floating badge, the same data that we see here also in the API. And with the data you can then build your own custom widgets that are more that might appear more natively in your website if this is a requirement of yours. And we see here for each of the configured platforms, there is the score. So the 9.2 for booking with 434 reviews and so on and so forth. And also the totals that we saw, 4.7, 4.72, and 3,890 reviews. That's it. I think this covers most of the widget settings. And Paola, are there any questions right now?
None so far. Yeah, I think if any questions come up when trying to configure the settings, there are help articles, and again, the recording will be shared, and also feel free to reach out if then you still have the feeling you need our help. If there are no questions now, I would again advertise next week's session where Tobi will talk about integration, so the PMS integrations, all the functions that come with that, and also connectivity. So you saw the API very quickly now already, but there are more things that you can pull from our API, and Tobi will show you that in more detail as well next week. So feel free to sign up, even if you cannot participate, the recording will be shared. And other than that, have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for joining, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.